Hello and welcome back. It's Margaret, aka Paint Pops, and today I'm back with another app critique. This time it's going to be for Audible, which is an app that mostly contains audiobooks and podcasts. Now, in my previous app critique videos, I received critique over how loose the structure of my content was and how I could use some better organization. And you know what? I really appreciate the feedback. So I've broken down this critique video into several sections that can hopefully be easier to follow along. Maybe you'd even want to consider using this as an outline if you're interviewing for a job and happen to have an app critique to do. But first, I do want to say that there's no such thing as a perfect app. My intention here is not to talk down on any other designers who worked on these products. I'm sure there's a lot of behind the scenes research and process that I'm not particularly privy to. Maybe it was designed a certain way to meet a business objective, or maybe something didn't test well. I'm just trying to look through the lens of an intended user and infer from the information that's been presented to me. All right, now let's get on with the critique. So when it comes to critiquing an app, how do you judge if something is good or bad? Well, as with most things, it depends on your criteria and what perspective you choose to view it from. There are two common frameworks used for app critiques, and that includes the persona framework and also the problem framework. With the persona framework, this allows me to explore different features in the app from the perspective of a user persona. And with the problem framework, it allows me to dive a little deeper into a specific workflow and also how I might want to accomplish a particular task. For both of these frameworks, as I'm going through the app, I'm also going to consider a couple of things as they pertain to either my persona or the problem that I'm trying to solve. So first, how is the app structured? Is the information architecture organized well enough to help the user get around or know where they are? How is the visual and interaction design? Are the UI patterns recognizable or easy to learn? Do the different design or interactive elements help make completing a task easier, or does it actually add to the frustration? And also, how accessible is the app? Does it make efforts to accommodate people who may be disabled? So for today's app critique, I'm actually going to be using the persona framework. Okay, so first off, who are the possible users of the Audible app? Well, in this case, I actually chose the app to critique today, so I'm aware of what it lets users do. But sometimes in an interview, you might actually be given an app that you're not already familiar with. In that case, I would suggest spending just a bit of time looking through the app to see what it's all about. So for example, identifying its core features before describing what you believe the target audience is supposed to be and why. So in the case of Audible, they primarily let users listen to audiobooks and podcasts. And from that information, I can think about a couple of different preliminary user personas for this app. I say preliminary because at this point, my critique is based on what I can observe within the app. They may or may not actually align with Audible's audience, since I haven't actually done my own research to back it up with data, but this is really to demonstrate that I can use limited information to formulate a fair critique. So for Audible, I can imagine that it could be for people who just want an alternative way to consume books. So for example, someone who doesn't want to carry around an e-reader or physical books because they have to travel or commute. Can also be for people who just don't have a lot of time and would like to be able to multitask. The app can also be great for people who are visually or motor impaired, so either permanently, temporarily, or situationally disabled. So for example, people who are blind or require reading glasses, or someone who might have recently had their pupils dilated, or someone who's not able to physically turn pages in a book, or someone like me who gets nauseous if they're trying to read in a moving vehicle. It can also be for people who may be cognitively impaired. So for example, if they have dyslexia or ADHD. So even though in my critique, I'm probably not going to cover all of these user personas, I think it would still be helpful to at least show your interviewer that you've considered all the different possible target audiences based on the nature of the app and what purpose you feel it's supposed to serve. For this particular critique, I'm going to choose one of the user personas that I've mentioned. So let's say that I'm an advertising account director and I made a resolution to read at least 30 books this year. In particular, I want to read more books about different management styles so that I can be better at my job. I drive half an hour to work every day, and after work I hit the gym, and then I have to go home and make dinner. So I'm pretty strapped on time. Now, diving deep into the app, the first thing I want to do is identify what are some of the main features and the primary user flows within Audible. On the home screen, I can see that it looks like it's mainly for recommendations. You can kind of ignore the Ready Player 2. It was just something that I looked at previously. But my persona in particular is looking for more management related books. So that's why I expect to see at the top. So because maybe I looked into other books that are related to management, I will also see at the top. And then hidden gems would also be something that's relevant and personalized for my experience. And then I would expect to see that there is a descending order of relevance and personalization. It makes sense over here. It's just, things are included with my membership or popular podcast or what's trending. So it's more about what everyone else is listening to instead of what I'm looking for in particular. So it makes sense that those are kind of lower on the page. I also see a section for how it works at the bottom, but I kind of expect to see this either in the profile section under FAQs or something, and then maybe also in the first time user experience walkthrough. This is when I would expect they would let me know how I can use my credits and how I can purchase books. In the library section, this is where I'm going to expect to be able to keep track of what I've read and also what I'm reading at the moment, since my persona does have a goal of reading 30 books this year. So it'd be good to be able to just quickly see what my progress is. Under the all section, looks like all my purchased books are in here. But then there's also a separate section for audiobooks, which I thought was supposed to be covered on this screen, and actually it looks like it's the same thing, because so far all my titles are indeed audiobooks and not podcasts. There's not a lot of clarity here over what is considered a category and what is considered a filter. The all section feels like it should be renamed purchased so that I know what I actually have available to read. For my persona, I want to be able to track my progress in finishing 30 books. So the filters I see here, like not started, downloaded, and finished are helpful. I also would expect to see a filter for the type of material, so such as either an audiobook or a podcast. It would make sense on this screen so I can further narrow down my choices. So for example, my particular user persona is only interested in reading audiobooks this year. For the author section, again, instead of seeing this as either a filter or a separate section, I actually imagine that this could be good for an option that I can sort or search by, because theoretically there could be a ton of different authors that are part of this list. And generally, when it comes to filters, I would prefer to use it for more finite options. And using a sort feature would be best for being able to arrange this narrowed down list of books and authors in an order that's easier for me to scan through. In the main library screen, I actually see that there is an option to sort by recent, length, title, author, and release date. So it makes sense that this is a feature here. And as a result, I don't really think that having author as a separate section at the top is necessary. But I do think that having collections is a nice feature to easily categorize titles, even if you want to do something like my favorite authors. For my particular user persona, maybe I want to distinguish between books that I'm reading for career development and ones that I'm reading for leisure. So it'd be helpful to be able to customize my library in this way. So my proposal for a revised top level navigation on the screen would be to have purchased for anything that I had already bought, wish list for things that I want, and also collections for how I decide to organize those two things in categories that actually make sense to me. If I tap into the three dots next to a title that I've already purchased, I get quite a lengthy menu that pops up. Not sure if the author's name is really needed here, since I discovered that I can actually learn more about this author from the title details if I go into the product description page. I'm also not sure where I'd be able to find favorites, since I haven't seen a page like that yet. And same goes for archive. So there seems to be way too many places right now where I can find the things I purchased today. So I think it would be helpful to eliminate some of these additional options. I think collections, purchase, and wish lists is actually pretty exhaustive in terms of categories within the library. Now in the Discover section, for my persona, I want to learn more about different types of management styles. So let's take a look at how easy or difficult it is to do that and find what I need. On this page, there's actually quite a bit of reading I have to do at the top under Discover Something New. It feels like there's a ton of choices for categories and it's a little overwhelming. Generally, when it comes to products with massive libraries, whether it's for audiobooks or music, users are either searching or browsing. So in the case of my persona, I want to search for management related books and then browse once I narrow it down by category. I think that on the Discover page, it'd actually be best to start with broader categories like what you see near the top over here, so that it's easier for users to find what they're looking for as quickly as possible. Same as if you were to go to a supermarket looking for ice cream, you wouldn't expect to find a section called Top Ice Cream Brands of the Month before looking in, say, the frozen food aisle. That being said, as I'm scrolling down on the Discover page, I do wonder why there are certain niche categories being shown to me if I haven't actually interacted that much with the app yet. Feels a little big brother, but Audible is owned by Amazon, so I'm not surprised if they're just using the data that they already have on you to push recommendations. Let's go back to browse by category and see if I can find any books that suits my needs. All right, I don't see any categories I'm interested in here, so I'm going to want to see all categories. It looks like business and careers is most relevant, so I'm going to tap into here. Now, I see a bunch of titles on the page. This isn't super helpful. Business and careers still felt like a very broad category. It's only one level in, but I can't seem to distill it any further. There's nothing around different types of careers or different areas of business. There isn't even a sort or filter option on this page for me to dig deeper. I'm pretty surprised by that, because I saw that in the library section. You think that for an app that's owned by Amazon, which has insanely detailed information architecture with super niche categories to browse through, that some of that would carry over to Audible, but no, doesn't look like it. If I try to hit the search icon, I can only search by title and author. So unless the management books I'm interested in all have the word management in it, which is somewhat unlikely, it looks like I'm out of luck. And even then, it would exclude any titles that don't match this keyword. So yeah, I think maybe both the search and browsing can use some improvements. The product description page, at least, is pretty in-depth. I can see a summary, duration, also some customer reviews, and any additional recommendations. So basically what you expect when you go see an Amazon product description page. I can even learn more about the author and see what other titles that they've written by tapping into this. In the customer review section, it would be nice to have an option to sort by rating. For my particular user persona, I don't have a lot of time to begin with. So if I'm able to quickly determine if, investing a bunch of hours into a book is really worth my time before starting it, that would be great. Just like with restaurant reviews, reasons for high or low ratings can really depend on each reviewer's taste. So it'd be nice to see if things that people are raving or complaining about actually resonates with what's important to me as a user. Within the profile section, looks like it's also progress related. I see the number of titles and badges at the top. So I'm going to tap into badges. So I'm curious to see what that's all about. I would say the badges are a pretty cute surprise and delight element. If you tap into any one of them, there's actually a little rhyme that accompanies it. For my persona though, I'm really interested in just being able to complete 30 books in a year. So a lot of these badges are not super relevant to my goal. It'd be great if I can actually set my own personal objective and designate a time frame. So if I can say I want to read X number of books within X amount of time. Since I do have a goal in mind, I'd be interested in an option to be able to share my progress with others to, perhaps holds me accountable. I think this concierge feature here is a nice touch. Since I'm strapped on time already, maybe I just want to get some quick recommendations on books that are related to management. If I don't want to bother browsing through the app myself. It's good that there's a librarian service for that. Now with the audio player, I think that the sleep timer feature is actually pretty cool. It looks like I'm able to set a finite amount of time for the audiobook to play. So in the case of my persona, let's say I just finished work, I'm at the gym, and I want to dedicate half an hour to working out. So I can set that time limit within the app. There's also the option of ending at the conclusion of a chapter. So if I don't want to be abruptly interrupted in the middle of the reading material and it's getting to a juicy part, it would be able to just end at the appropriate time. And again, going back to the fact that my persona doesn't have a ton of time to begin with, having the option to change the narration speed can also help me finish the book faster, especially because most of the time, if you think about it, reading words on a page tends to be faster than if you were to hear it spoken out loud. So this gives me flexibility in deciding whether I want to slow things down and enjoy the performance of the narration, or if I want to just cram as much info into my brain in the shortest amount of time. Now let's dive a little deeper into the visual design of the app. Back on the homepage, my first impression is that it looks really busy and chaotic. There's a bunch of different design elements going on here. So for example, there's a lot of banners and each one looks distinct from one another. There's cover art, there's different headline styles. If the goal here is really just for the user to discover some reading material, then I feel like it's not doing a great job because I'm not sure what in particular I'm looking at. There's a banner that tells me I can listen to the books on any device. But this is also information that doesn't change whether, this is my first or my 10th time using the app. So it should at the very least be something that's dismissible. If I know that this feature exists, I don't think I have to be reminded of it every time. The headline at the top that explains what the screen's purpose is can also be a lot shorter. I think maybe a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, Margaret would be enough. The titles of all the other sections in the homepage already tell me what I'm looking at. There's also some copy here that says included with your membership that's underneath the headlines, but the orange banner at the bottom of the cover art that says included already does the same thing, so I don't think it's necessary to repeat it at the top. In the profile section, again, it looks like there's a lot going on. There's lots of floating elements. I want to see a clearer distinction between stuff that's related to my membership and my account versus things that are related to my achievements. So, how many books I've read, or my badges, my listening time, etc. And as you can see, the app actually uses a lot of text and text links that look very similar to each other, especially if you're viewing it in dark mode like I am. The only difference is that one is in white and the other is a lighter gray, which means that as a user, I have to work extra hard to determine whether something is clickable. If there's a better hierarchy of distinct heading and body copy text sizes, maybe using more different combinations of shapes and colors, and maybe even including some dividers here can provide clearer delineations between sections. Within library, there's actually quite a few design styles for navigation within the app. So here you see that there's a menu that has a magnified appearance for the item that you're viewing, and then a second level right underneath it. Typically, for this second level, I see chips as being a UI element that you can select multiple of, but it looks like you can only do one at a time here. And as I mentioned, it feels like these items should really behave more as filters than navigation categories anyway. The magnification is also just kind of distracting on a page that already uses a bunch of different text sizes. I think maybe you could use some other indication of a tab navigation, like maybe just putting a bar underneath each of the categories, and that would still be able to convey where you are. Within the Discover screen, here we see that the chips are being used again at the top, except that this time it's for the purpose of navigation. There's some inconsistency in some of the UI elements being used. I'd actually like to see the same design pattern used in the home screen, where you have a headline for each one of these categories, and then a few cover art underneath. It's one less navigation UI for the user to learn, and I can also better understand what the category is just by seeing example titles that fit into each one. All right, now it's time for critiquing the interaction design of the app. So, how's the experience of actually interacting with the visual elements we just went over? I noticed that if I want to see more details about title and go to its product description page, I can't actually tap on this giant thumbnail of the cover art or even the title of the book. I actually have to tap on the three dots at the top here to open up a separate menu. It's pretty hidden and just feels like a lot of unnecessary taps when there's an opportunity to kind of just simplify this workflow by linking the title to the product description page. In terms of overall navigation within the app, there are very clear slide animations between the pages, and also, with the audio overlay, sliding upwards, so I know if I need to tap backwards or collapse the screen to return to where I was. For the product description page, I like that, if I hit read more, it generally keeps me in the same place on the page without jumping around too much. This way I don't have to keep scrolling up and down on the page if I lose my spot. If I want to look into additional titles by an author, I also like that as I scroll down, the sort option is still tethered to the top. Now, when I hit buy with 1 credit, the buttons on the screen actually change to confirm or cancel. But it's very subtle because the colors of the buttons are the same as the screen right before it. I would expect to see either a drawer to slide up or maybe a pop-up dialog to appear so that as a user, it's super obvious that I'm about to purchase something and I have the intention of doing so. Within the library page, when I expand the menu for a title and I hit play next, I assume that this adds a title to a queue since a toast message popped up and it said add it to play next. It seems to indicate that, there's a list of some kind, but the problem is I can't actually seem to find this cue when I expand the audio player. This would have been a good feature if, my persona already has a list of books in mind that she wants to read, and she wants to read them in a certain order. Maybe I don't want to just read books for career development, for example, and I want to alternate with some leisure reading in between. When I tap on a title to play it, there also isn't an indication which one is actually playing from the library. I will actually have to look down at the floating audio player to confirm. You can see here that I don't actually have a bunch of titles yet because I'm relatively new to this app. But I like that there's an option for bulk actions. So for example, tapping select allows me to select multiple titles at once and do one of two things. Either add it to a collection or remove it from my device. Just think that maybe they could have shown the entire description for add to collections instead of what they have here, which is add to ... The last thing I want to add here is that while I can tap on recent to decide how I want to sort my titles, I can't actually sort in ascending or descending order. Usually in other apps, so kind of like Spotify, there's an arrow that appears to indicate which direction the order of items is in, and you'll be able to just tap it and easily change it. So if I intend to have at least 30 titles here, that's going to involve a lot of scrolling. If, let's say I'm looking for titles that are shorter and it's sorted by length. Now let's talk about accessibility. Even though my persona isn't actually permanently disabled, we can still consider some situational or temporary disabilities and how usable the app is should those use cases crop up. So going back to the audio player, if I tap this little car icon at the top, all right. And as a reminder, my user persona drives to work every day. So, this might be a good opportunity to get some reading in. But obviously my eyes are supposed to be focused on the road. So I think that having giant buttons available for drive mode from this audio player reduces my chances of pressing the wrong thing. And it's also good for safety because I'm not trying to do a bunch of things at once. So good to know that Audible has considered this particular use case. It also focuses on just two actions, bookmarking a section, if I just heard something enlightening and I want to remember it. And then going back 30 seconds if I missed something because I was busy concentrating on the road. There's no option here to scroll to a specific spot on the track, or changing the reading speed, which are things that generally require a higher level of accuracy anyway, so it makes sense that it wouldn't be here. So on the homepage, I see that there are a bunch of rasterized images are used. This means that the text in some of these banners are actually embedded into the actual images. So the banner would actually scale according to the size of your phone. So, let's say my phone broke and I need to use a temporary phone, and that new phone has a smaller screen. So now the text in these banners also becomes smaller and it's more difficult to read. And just out of curiosity, I actually tried using a screen reader on this app to see if it's able to pick up any of the text here. But I was a little disappointed to find that they were only able to read a couple of headings on the screen. It kind of makes me wonder if Audible has even considered that people who are hard of seeing would be able to make use of an app like this. I did notice that there's a heavy use of ghost buttons across the app, and they're generally not the most accessible. If I'm quickly scanning my eye across the screen, it'd be a faster read if, say, the buttons were orange, which is their brand color. Just one more point regarding the global navigation. It looks like you should be able to tell which one you've selected because the icons turn from an outlined look and feel to a more filled in look. But with the library icon, it's harder to tell because It's actually already made up of a bunch of lines, but at least there are labels under each one of these. All right, I know that was a lot to take in, and don't worry, in actual app critiques, you don't actually have to go through every little detail of the product. This is why it's helpful to at least start with a framework so that you have some kind of structure, because otherwise you're probably going to start nitpicking. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever used Audible or done an app critique during an interview. Until next time, bye!